All right, let's jump right in today. We're going deep on TikTok law, and specifically, we're going to break down the strategy of a UK firm that's really making waves.
Oh, this should be interesting.
Yeah, Stuart Miller Solicitors.
Okay.
They're a top firm. I mean, like top 1% in the UK, specializing in some pretty serious stuff.
What kind of stuff?
We're talking fraud, drugs, violence, even firearms. But here's the thing.
Okay.
They've absolutely nailed it on TikTok. Over 205,000 followers.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. You know, it really makes you think. That's a lot of people getting their legal advice from, short form videos.
It's a different world out there.
It is. And we've got a ton of data to dig into, from monthly performance breakdowns to individual video posts and hashtag trends, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, sounds like we've got our work cut out for us.
Yeah, but, today I really want to focus on the videos themselves.
Right, the content.
Yeah. What's making them so engaging? What's their secret sauce?
Yeah.
And what can other businesses learn from how they're approaching this?
Yeah, because you don't often see law firms, especially ones dealing with such serious cases, going viral on TikTok.
Exactly. It's like, what's the word? Like watching a courtroom drama turn into, a bite-sized, binge-worthy series.
Right. It's fascinating. It's like this really unexpected mix. You've got this very traditional, formal profession embracing a platform that's, all about being light and fun and kind of quirky.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great example of how social media is really changing the game for businesses. They have to rethink how they connect with their audience.
Okay, so let's start with those monthly trends. Anything jump out at you?
Well, November 2024 was a really big month for them, engagement-wise.
Oh.
Yeah, their top post that month hit a 0.03% engagement rate.
Okay.
Which is, pretty impressive.
That's worth noting for sure. So let's zoom in on November. Let's look at some specific videos. All right, this first one. Post ID 746-353-863-954-963-1776. It asks a pretty scary question. Could your housemate's actions land you in prison? The description even says that even if you don't know what your housemate's doing, you could still get in trouble. And they're using hashtags like hashtag police, hashtag lawyer, hashtag law school, hashtag crime, and hashtag house. What do you think about that, framing it that way?
It's definitely a hook. It plays on a real fear,
Yeah.
Especially, I think, for younger people who might be living with roommates for the first time.
Right.
The idea that you could be responsible for someone else's actions, even if you don't know about it, that's scary.
It makes you want to click. And here's how they really drive that point home. The video starts with, you could face up to 14 years in prison because of your housemate. And then they talk about, having illegal stuff in your home, like drugs or weapons. Even if it's not in your room, even if it's just in a shared space, you could still be charged with possession.
Oh, wow. They're not messing around.
No, they're not. And they mentioned that even if you weren't directly involved in whatever illegal stuff was going on, you could still be in trouble if the police think you ignored signs that something was wrong. But then they offer a little bit of hope. They say, we defended a client after his brother's drugs and cash were found at their home. We proved he had no knowledge, and he was found not guilty.
Okay, so there is a way out.
Yeah, it's like they're showing you both sides, the risk and then also the possibility of a good outcome.
That's smart. It's like a story,
Totally.
A real life example, and
Yeah.
it shows that they know what they're doing.
Exactly. And that they can get results.
Yeah, it builds credibility. And it reassures people that even in these scary situations, there's hope.
Right. And of course, they end with a call to action. So always be mindful of who you're living with. And if you want the best defense, contact us now and follow us for more.
Concise. Clear.
Yeah, it's like, here's what you need to know, and here's what you need to do if you find yourself in this situation.
So they're using fear, but they're also using storytelling to educate people and, subtly promote their services.
Right. They're not just throwing out legal jargon. They're making it real. They're making it relatable.
It's smart. It really connects with people on an emotional level.
Okay, let's move on to another video from November. This one's post ID 74627-95464-7823-84416. It asks, does the purity of a substance impact how the police charge you? And they're using hashtags like hashtag crime, hashtag police, hashtag lawyer, hashtag law school, and hashtag criminal. So, it's a bit more niche than that last one. What do you think about their approach here?
Well, it seems like they're getting into the nitty-gritty of drug law here.
Yeah.
It shows they're confident that they can break down these complex legal concepts in a way that works on TikTok. for their audience.
Right. Okay, so the video starts with, the police catch you with cocaine. Doesn't matter how pure it is. But then they go on to explain that cocaine is rarely sold pure. It's often mixed with other stuff like caffeine, baking soda, lactose, to make it heavier, basically.
Right, to bulk it up.
Exactly. But then they bring it back to the UK, and they say in the UK, the purity of cocaine matters.
Okay, so they're leading you in, making you wonder.
Totally. It's like a little hook. And then they explain that high purity cocaine, that suggests a bigger role in drug trafficking, which means harsher penalties. But low purity, that might mean you're just dealing small time or even just using it yourself, and that could mean a lighter sentence, like a fine or community service.
So they're giving you those concrete examples, making it real, not just abstract legal stuff.
And to really drive home how serious this is, they say that if you're caught with more than 5 grams, especially if it's high purity, you could be looking at life in prison.
Wow. They're not sugarcoating it.
Nope. And as always, they end with their call to action. If you're dealing with any criminal matters, contact us now and follow us for more.
They're really good at weaving that in,
Yeah, it's subtle but effective.
It's like they're answering these niche questions that people have, but they're also reaching a broader audience at the same time.
Right. They're showing their expertise, but they're also educating people. Okay, let's do one more before we take a break. This one, post ID 7462051945029618976, opens with, facing 15 years in prison, our client walked away with just 3 months, thanks to a carefully constructed defense. And the hashtags are #lawyer, #law school, #crime, and #police. What are they doing here?
Classic case study. And that opening line, wow, it grabs you.
Yeah.
You instantly want to know how they did that.
So they explained that their client was charged with supplying Class A drugs, and he was about to go to prison for a long time until they stepped in.
Okay, so they're the heroes of the story.
Right, and then they talk about their defense strategy, which was all about mitigation.
So they're showing off their expertise, but they're explaining it in a way that's easy to understand.
Exactly. And they explained that their client got involved with drug dealing because he was in debt, he owed money and didn't know how to pay it back, and he was scared for his safety.
So they're humanizing him. You start to feel for the guy.
Yeah. And they talk about his mental health issues, how he didn't have any support.
It makes you invested in the outcome.
Yeah, totally. And then they go through all the steps they took. They submitted a letter from the client, expressing remorse. They got character references. They presented evidence that countered what the prosecution was saying.
So they're showing how thorough they are, how much they care about their clients.
Yeah, and it worked. The judge gave their client only 3 months instead of 15 years.
That's incredible.
Right, and they end by saying, this case shows why having the right lawyers makes all the difference if you're facing criminal charges.
It's a powerful message. They get results.
And of course, they tell people to get in touch and follow them for more.
So this video is like a masterclass in legal storytelling. They took a complicated case and made it into this captivating story.
Yeah. And it highlights everything they're good at, their expertise, their compassion, their ability to get amazing results. So what are we seeing here? Real-life examples, explanations of the law, highlighting the consequences. Is this all part of a strategy?
Definitely. They're tapping into something that we all need. We want to understand the world around us, and the legal system can be really scary.
Right.
So they're making it less intimidating.
It's like they're saying, hey, we're here to help you navigate this complex world. But how are they setting themselves apart from other law firms who might be trying to do the same thing?
That's a great question. We're going to need to dig into some more videos to see how they're really making their mark on legal TikTok. It's really interesting, isn't it? They're not afraid to talk about the darker side of the law, and I think people find that, well, appealing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this next video, it's post ID 7460566873220571105. Gets into digital forensics.
Ooh, getting techie.
The question is, can the police access your phone even after a factory reset?
Good question.
And they're using hashtags like #police, #phone, #crime, #lawyer, #law school, and even #iPhone.
Smart.
Yeah, reaching that tech crowd. What's the strategy here, do you think?
Well, I think a lot of people, especially younger people who grew up with smartphones, they think a factory reset wipes everything.
Right, like it's gone forever.
But Stuart Miller's solicitors are saying, not so fast.
Yeah, they start by saying a factory reset does delete your personal data, like messages and apps. But then they hit you with, that doesn't mean it's gone forever.
Okay, so they're playing with your expectations a bit.
Yeah, it's like a hook. And then they explain that the police and those forensic experts, they've got tools that can sometimes get that deleted data back, even after a reset.
Interesting. So is it like a total myth then that factory resets wipe everything?
Well, they say it depends on the phone, the operating system, how the reset was done. There are a lot of
So
factors.
they're getting technical, showing their knowledge.
Exactly. And then they take it a step further. They say that data stored in the cloud or in backups that can still be accessed if the authorities get permission.
Right, so even if you think you've deleted something, it might still be out there somewhere.
It's like data never really dies. And what's interesting is that they don't explicitly tell people not to delete stuff from their phones.
It's more about education, empowering people to make informed choices.
Right. Okay, let's move on to something that I think will resonate with a lot of people. Taxes.
Everyone loves taxes.
This video, post ID 745-7972-9698-9829-8657, is titled, "Here are 3 key ways HMRC will investigate you." HMRC, that's Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, the UK's tax authority.
The tax man.
Exactly. And the hashtags are #taxes, #crime, #lawyer, and even #side hustle. So they're casting a wide net here.
Smart. Taxes are something everyone has to deal with.
Yeah. They start with this warning. Think you can slip under the radar. Think again. And then they list those 3 red flags that can get you investigated. Undeclared income, underreporting or inflating costs, and filing your tax returns late or making mistakes.
So those classic tax traps.
Yeah. And they give examples, like if you have a side hustle and you don't declare that income, or if you try to inflate your business expenses to pay less tax, or if you're driving a fancy car but claiming a low income.
So they're showing you what HMRC is looking for.
Exactly. And then they end with, if you're facing any criminal charges or investigations, get in touch and follow us for more.
It's like they're the tax whisperers. They can help you navigate those tricky waters.
Yeah. Okay, this next one. Post ID 745-75994-3211242785. It's about e-bikes.
Okay, interesting.
The question is, riding an e-bike while over the limit. Hashtags, #driving, #e-bike, #drinking, #bike, and #police. What do you think? Staying current, relevant?
Yeah, e-bikes are getting really popular, and the laws around them are still, well, a bit murky.
Totally. They start off by saying, don't ever ride an e-bike while drunk, which seems obvious.
Right, common sense.
But then they explain that riding any bike under the influence is illegal, and you can get a fine, up to £1,000 or even £2,500 if it's dangerous cycling.
So they're not just saying it's a bad idea, they're saying it's against the law.
And they talk about how cycling offenses don't usually give you points on your license, but you could still be disqualified from driving in serious cases.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's good to know. And they explain that the police can stop you if they think you're drunk, but they can't make you take a breathalyzer or a blood test.
So knowing your rights.
Right. And then they end with a warning. So next time you've had one too many and you see that e-bike, stop and think about the consequences. A quick ride home isn't worth it.
They're appealing to your common sense, but also giving you the legal facts.
Yeah. Okay, this next video, post ID 745-722-946-1753-83073, is about tracking devices. Like Apple AirTags.
Oh, those are everywhere now.
They ask, is it legal to use tracking devices like Apple AirTags in the UK? Hashtags are #crime, #lawyer, #tracking, and #AirTag.
So tapping into a hot topic.
Yeah, and it's tricky, right? Because these devices have legitimate uses, but they can also be misused.
Yeah, it's a bit of a gray area.
So they start by talking about how tracking devices are often used for things like keeping track of your keys or your car. But then they get into the more controversial stuff, like tracking people.
Okay, that's where it gets interesting.
They say flat out that tracking someone without their knowledge or consent, that's illegal. And you could go to prison for up to 10 years.
Wow, they're not messing around.
No. But then they explain that if the person you're tracking agrees to it, then it's usually okay. So, like, if you're worried about your friend's safety after a night out and they agree to let you track them, that's fine. But if you're secretly tracking your partner because you think they're cheating, that's a big no-no.
So it's all about consent.
Right. And they end with, so always be mindful of the context and follow us for more.
They're reminding people that the law can be complicated, and sometimes you need expert advice.
Yeah, it's like, when in doubt, give us a call. Okay, one more before we move on. This one. Post ID 745-38383-768-161-888 asks, can the police listen to your conversations with your lawyer?
No, that's a question everyone wants to know.
Right. The hashtags are #police, #lawyer, #law school, #crime, #recording, and #phone.
Getting right to the heart of lawyer-client confidentiality.
Yeah, a fundamental legal principle. So they start with, the police can record your phone calls with your lawyer. Is this true? And then they answer, Generally, the police cannot record or intercept telephone calls with your lawyer without authorization.
So they're clearing up that misconception right away.
Yeah, and they explain that there's a law, our IPA, the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, that only allows interception in cases of national security or serious crime.
But there are always exceptions, right?
Right, and they acknowledge that. They say, but things get tricky when it comes to prison calls.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And they give an example, the Belmarsh prison scandal, where prison authorities were secretly recording calls between inmates and their lawyers.
So even in a system that values confidentiality, there can be abuses?
Exactly. And then they give some practical advice, like using encrypted messaging apps or meeting in person if you can.
So they're not just talking about the problems, they're offering solutions.
Yeah. And of course they end with, follow us for more. So we've covered a lot here. Digital forensics, taxes, e-bikes, tracking devices, and now this. What's their strategy?
It's a mix of things, isn't it? They're using fear, intrigue, and practical advice.
Right.
They're taking real-life scenarios and shocking statistics, and they're explaining the law in a way that people can understand and relate to.
Yeah.
And they're always reminding you that they're the experts. They're the ones you should turn to when you need legal help.
Absolutely. So let's see what else they've got up their sleeve.
It's amazing how they take these everyday situations and show you the legal side of things.
Yeah, it's like you never know when you might need a lawyer. Okay, this next one. Post ID 744-64631 717-293-5968 is for anyone who's ever seen those flashing blue lights in their rearview mirror.
Oh, everyone's been there.
It's titled, 4 Things You Should Never Do If You're Pulled Over by the Police. Hashtags are hashtag police, hashtag car talk, hashtag driving, hashtag crime, and hashtag lawyer. So, practical advice, it seems.
Smart move. Getting pulled over, it's stressful.
Totally. They start by saying, if the police pull you over, never make these 4 mistakes. And then they go through each one. First up, don't speak unless spoken to.
Okay, I've heard that before.
Yeah, but they explain it in a way that makes sense. Like, if the police ask, do you know why I pulled you over? Don't try to guess.
Right, don't incriminate yourself.
And they even say, don't say things like, I might have been speeding, because that could be used against you. Their second tip is, stay in your car, stay seated, and keep your hands visible, ideally on the steering wheel.
So stay calm, don't make any sudden moves.
Exactly. And they emphasize that you don't have to get out of your car unless the officer has a good reason. They also remind people that the police need a warrant to search your car, unless they have a really good reason.
Knowing your rights is important.
Tip number 3, safely stop your vehicle. Sounds simple, right?
Yeah.
But they say when you're stressed, you might just pull over anywhere.
Right, without thinking.
So they advise finding a safe spot, like a lay-by or a hard shoulder. And their final tip is always have your driving documents. License, registration, insurance.
Makes sense.
They even explain what to do if you don't have them with you, so it's really comprehensive.
It's like a little checklist for what to do if you get pulled over.
And then, of course, they tell people to contact them if they need help with driving-related charges.
It's a great way to generate leads, right? Because driving offenses are so common.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we're ready for this one, post ID 7444612639361076513. The title is 11 million pounds worth of illegal items found hidden in bananas. Hashtags, hashtag police, hashtag crime, hashtag lawyer, and hashtag bananas.
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
The video starts with 11 million pounds worth of drugs hidden in bananas. And then they tell the story of this smuggling ring that tried to bring 139 kilograms of cocaine into the UK, hidden in a banana shipment.
Wow.
Yeah. And they point out that the guy running the operation was doing it all remotely, using encrypted messages.
So pretty sophisticated.
Right. But they got caught. The drugs were found during a search at Gateway Port.
So the authorities are on top of it.
Yeah. And they talk about how criminals are always trying to come up with creative ways to smuggle stuff. I'll give another example. A gang that got caught hiding cocaine in pallets of raw chicken. They went to prison for a long time, over 80 years total.
Wow.
They make it clear that these smuggling attempts almost never work. The police and border control, they're always developing new methods and technology to catch smugglers.
So it's a deterrent, don't even try it.
Exactly. And they end with, for important Class A drugs, you could face between 3.5 years to over 20 years in prison, but attempting to conceal them will result in a harsher sentence.
They're not mincing words.
Nope. And then contact us if you're facing criminal charges. So it's a wild story, right?
It is. It's like something out of a movie. But they use it to educate people about the law and the consequences of breaking it. And to promote their services, of course.
Yeah, they're really good at that. Okay, let's talk about something a bit more serious. The age of consent.
Okay. Important topic.
This video, post ID 744-387-2157-3288-887073, is titled, Ever Wondered Why the Age of Consent in the UK Changes? Hashtags are #UK, #consent, #crime, #lawyer, and they even tag another TikToker at Mohammed Zeb.
Interesting. A collaboration.
Yeah, maybe reaching a new audience. So they start by stating the age of consent in the UK. It's 16. Doesn't matter your gender or sexual orientation.
Okay.
And then they break it down into 4 key points. First, if someone is under 16, they can't legally consent to sexual activity, even if they say they want to, even if they're in a relationship.
Clear and simple.
Yeah. Second point, even though the age of consent is 16, it's illegal to make, share, or keep indecent images of anyone under 18. And that includes sexting between 16 and 17-year-olds.
That's important to clarify.
Right. Third point, it's not just about intercourse. Any kind of sexual touching, sending inappropriate messages, meeting up with a child after grooming them online, all of that is illegal if the child is under 16. And the penalties are even worse if the child is under 13.
They're really covering all the bases.
Yeah, making sure people understand. And their final point is that saying you didn't know their age isn't a good enough excuse. Unless you can prove you really believed they were over 16.
So no, I didn't know defense.
Right. It's a really important video. They're using their platform to educate people, protect young people, and promote responsible behavior.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of good here.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Stuart Miller Solicitor's TikTok strategy, what are your final thoughts?
I'm impressed. They've shown that even a serious profession like law can be successful on TikTok. They're using storytelling, practical advice, humor sometimes, and they're not afraid to tackle tough topics.
Yeah, they're making the law more accessible, more understandable, and they're building a strong brand in the process.
It makes you think, what other industries could benefit from this approach? Food for thought. Until next time, everyone, keep exploring. You never know where you'll find your next legal lesson.